everybody. Thank you very much for joining us and welcome to Masters of Real Estate. Today, we are going to talk all about real estate, but also the bad parts about real estate and squatters. It's been a big topic lately. A lot of people having issues with squatters occurring with tenant rights and all that kind of stuff. And so today, I have George McCleary on the line here to be able to talk about the squatter aspect, but also real estate investing and how he got started doing this and how he became a developer and has, talking about his detailed deep dive experience in real estate as a whole. So thanks so much, George. I really appreciate you coming on today, and look forward to hearing these topics, some of these exciting things of how to save me money when I get a squatter in my property, because it's happened multiple times and it always takes months to deal with. So thanks a lot for sharing your education here.
Yeah, man, sounds like you just dealt with one. Pre-recording, may have heard Matthew talk a little bit about a squatter that he had in one of his out-of-state properties.
Yeah, it's crazy. We had a foreclosure occur on one of our loans and in Kentucky, and finally got a squatter out. They took over the property. They had a fake lease and everything. And then, of course, after that occurred, we're like, great, what do we do? Go get the attorney. They're like, you got to go through legal process. Great, it's going to take 90 days just to try to get them out in the first place. And it ended up taking longer than that, like about 6 months to actually get them fully out of the asset, which costs thousands of dollars in lost interest and lost rent and things like that, let alone the renovation costs of having to clean it up after they leave, So I'm appreciating this conversation right now,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm happy to be here.
So can you tell us a little bit about how you got started in real estate? What was your background before real estate, or how you kind of fell into that in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a business school graduate who went into banking because I heard that's where the money was. So I went to work for Bear Stearns as an analyst. And if you've been around long enough, you know that Bear Stearns was one of the banks that went under during the Great Recession. So I didn't stick around that long, actually. So by the time I tried banking and didn't like it, they were still a great place to work, and it was a really hard job to get, but I gave it up after a short period of time because I just felt it wasn't right. So I moved to Australia, became a surfer, read a big stack of books about what the heck I wanted to do with my life. I knew that I wanted to make money, and I knew that I wanted to make big stacks of it, but I just didn't really know how. And plus, I was an uninformed 22-year-old kid. So as with so many other investors, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I came back, I bought a duplex with no money down, and it worked. In a word, I'm making a very long story very short, but yeah, it absolutely works. So then I bought a triplex and a fourplex and then a 14plex, and it just kind of kept going up from there. And along the way, I started doing some flipping and then a little bit of development because, once your flips get big enough, then you think, okay, why not just bulldoze this thing and build a nice new house?
There's not that much difference, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And plus, oh man, development's so much easier in terms of just like the moving parts instead of a flip. But anyhow, so then I've been doing that for many years. Then I actually had a left-hand turn into the weed business for a few years, which is not something I normally mention, but I know you're from California, so you can identify with that. So after that, full bore back into real estate the past several years and been developing, flipping, and I've also been paying close attention to the policies in the West Coast, Portland in particular. I come from Portland, Oregon, which is a lovely city who's gotten some bad press lately, some deserved, some not. And a number of those policies have really gotten under my skin because they affect my livelihood as a real estate investor, and yours as well, Matthew. So what I did one day, it was actually Super Bowl Sunday. I woke up and I had just heard a story about a friend who had a squatter and just how difficult it was to get out of that situation. They didn't know where to turn. And not only that, but this person wasn't being held responsible for what they were doing. And I got the whole rundown of what was happening, and I looked into it. I realized this is a scam that was happening everywhere. So I made a video and I posted it on social media. It was called I Stole a House. And it was a very tongue-in-cheek recapping of all right, this is how I stole a house in Portland and just totally got away with it. And some people actually thought that I stole the house. They didn't really get all the little Easter eggs I left in there to tip them off that, no, it wasn't really me. But then what happened was it started getting reposted, not under my name, so they couldn't link back to my profile and realized that I was a developer. So a lot of people thought that I was stealing it.
Okay.
But across all the platforms, it got put up on TikTok, it exploded, then taken down by TikTok. And then it got put up on Meta, and like a week later, it got taken down, but then put back up again, but then taken down again. So Elon let me have it for forever. So
Nice.
I didn't even post it there originally. It just went to a bunch of like political commentators, mainly conservative ones. It exploded, tens of millions of views. My life changed overnight. I went on the news. I got called by Dr. Phil, News Nation, Fox News.
Wow.
They talked about me on Joe Rogan. It's completely like blew everything up. And the whole time I was thinking like, whoa, like this is a very underserved market. There's a lot of this crime happening. People are losing tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars to this
Big
crime
problem to
in
solve.
particular.
Yeah.
It's a big problem. And we talk so much about like tenants and toilets in real estate. Like, oh, it's a pain. Like your tenants are going to call you late at night. That's bad. Losing sleep, losing a few $100, not a good thing. We can agree on that. But how about losing $50,000? How about losing several $100,000 to a deed fraud case? I talked to these people and they would like cry over Zoom telling me the horrible things that had happened to them. And I'm like, holy Toledo, these are the ship
crazy.
sinkers. These are the things that they might not happen to you. It's less likely than an exploding water heater. But man, if it ever does, you are absolutely effed.
It's a big risk that's very difficult to mitigate for sure, because you can mitigate, with reserves and things like that for repairs or tenant turnover or headaches like that, and there's a process that everybody knows how to follow. When it comes to a squatter, everybody's just kind of taking it on, taking the punch in the face, each time, right? And so it's crazy.
Yeah, man, it's pretty wild. And I had never even heard of title fraud, deed fraud at the time, but I was basically just going after the things that I realized were like I was saying, the ship sinkers, the stuff that can absolutely just take you out. And most rental properties in America are owned by just mom and pop landlords, and they're not
Right.
big corporations that can absorb that type of financial impact. And all of the financial impacts that I talked about with people were ranging from like a low end of like a few grand for somebody who just, overstayed their welcome, all the way up through really sophisticated people that were staying in nice houses, knew the court system, knew how to exploit it, and they took them for over six figures. Yeah, man.
That just hurts like
It's
that. See, and that's
wild.
that's the thing, is that you have people now with they're armed with information that understand the laws on this, that could steal a house for at least a period of time, and cost somebody so much money. It's unbelievable. And you take $100,000 bath on a property like that, most people are going to lose it. They're not going to be able to keep that house. It's just what's going to happen. And unless they're able to do that over a period of time, and after that, you probably get rid of your rental properties for the rest of your life, because you don't want to deal with that anymore. It's insane.
Yeah, no, the emotional trauma, that was one thing that I, knew was present, but the degree to which it was present, I never really understood until I got face to face with these people that were telling me about their squatter situations, their deed fraud situations, and I was really struck by just the emotional devastation that was causing these people. But the one thing, Matthew, that they had all in common was they didn't know where to turn. There was no definitive resource. Like, okay, I've got a squatter, I'm going to call this person. They would just call up their local attorney and they'd be like, well, okay, I guess you can either do ejectment or eviction, because that's
Right.
what you're
It's the only
supposed to
thing
do.
they know how to do.
It's the
Right.
only thing. Yeah, no, if the only tool in your belt is a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail. So
Right.
I was thinking, this isn't right. But then I heard also a lot of unconventional stories, like people that used very unconventional means, because, I'm not a cop. I'm not telling them. I'm like, dude, just give it to me straight. They're like, well, I had access to a large number of rodents. And like, go on. And this would happen over and over and over again. I would hear these wacko stories, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe they're not so wacko. When people are backed into a corner and people are desperate, they will take measures beyond that which they realized that they could take. And
Right.
It's come down, Matthew. It's come down to actual like life or death situations. There's been instances where homeowners have been shot, squatters have been unalived by their by the owners, and the other way around as well. So I took all these experiences, all these stories I heard, and I condensed them into a course, into Squatter Defender, where I say like, all right, here's everything you can do. Here's everything that I can recommend, and here's the things I can't officially go on the record as recommending, but
people have done them in the
people have
past.
done
And
it,
they've worked.
and it's worked. So do with this information what you will.
I was telling you previously about how I saw somebody that was specialized in this in a certain market. I wish they were in the markets that I was investing in, but where they would go into the property and just like you said, squat on the squatter and say, no, I have the lease. Sorry, if you're going to commit fraud, then I'll commit fraud right back. And that's what he was basically doing is, saying, fine, no, I had the lease first. I'm the tenant. This guy's in my property and shouldn't be, and making their life a living hell and just living with them until they get out of the property. And pretty much, if you really think about it, it would probably work if you're going around and, causing havoc and lighting fires and, doing crazy stuff to your property, then, I don't know that many people would like stay in that type of environment. You start destroying stuff and, doing that, and you could make someone's life pretty much hell. Right. And I thought that was like, after me thinking, maybe I should go and steal the front door and steal the AC unit, which, you can't do because it's illegal to do those things and you'll get sued for that for sure. But there's other things that you could potentially do, that would not cause that problem, or it'd be very difficult to get sued for in those situations. But it is a risk, right? There's those as items that they're the lines of where you should go. Hey, they're committing fraud. So is it an eye for an eye here, or how do we make this right? Because I've thought multiple times, let me just get a gun and go down there and get them out of my property, but you can't go do that if they, are in the property from a legal standpoint. That's what you want to do, but you can't do it without, especially if you have some net worth that they can go after. This all could be major liability you got to protect yourself against, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, especially if you got a deep pocket, they can and will go after you. And there's been multiple instances that I've heard about and studied, and even in the news, about people who have done just that, like, not just like set up bear traps or, set up booby traps and stuff like that, but also gone down to the property, like, and at gunpoint, taking them out of the property. And the short story on that is you just can't do it if you want to have like a viable way to get your squatter out. And I'm really glad that you mentioned squatting on the squatter, though, because that is, number one, it's completely fascinating. And number two, it works. And I actually advise people in Squatter Defender, I'm like, hey, I can't recommend that you do this. And I very vehemently recommend that they actually don't do it themselves, because you're putting yourself into harm's way with an individual who is desperate enough to squat. You have more to lose than your squatter 99% of the time. But what you're exploiting with squatting on the squatter is the same exploitation that the squatter is doing, which is that the shirt on your back is presumed to be your own unless somebody can prove otherwise. And so the tenant is in possession of the squatter is in possession of the house. Possession, as we know, is 9/10 of the law. So when the law enforcement officer shows up and they give him a fake lease, the utility, he's got reasonable doubt that, maybe he actually is a tenant there, and the cop doesn't want to stick his neck out, certainly not in a place like California or in Portland. And so the cop says, all right, you guys got to go fight it out. You got to go fight it out. But that's, again, possession. So you take possession of it. You just move in. You don't evict them. You don't kick them out. You don't take them out at gunpoint or set up a bear trap or anything. But you're the new roommate, or your contractors that you hire, and I've got relationships around the country for that now. That guy is now the new roommate. So when the cop shows up and says, like, I got two guys who, he doesn't live here. It's like, yeah, I absolutely do. I've got the same lease that you do.
Here's my lease. Yeah,
here's my lease. So the cop is faced with the same decision that he had before. Like, okay, who's telling the truth and who's not? And they're not in the he said, she said game. They use their judgment to figure out if someone's committed a crime, if they've been drinking, if they smell weed or something, or I guess that's not relevant in California anymore. If they smell something or see something that is absolutely the indication a crime has been committed. So,
Right.
yeah, so that's
Yeah,
that's how that
they
works.
technically are just looking at it going, hey, this is a domestic issue, this is not, or a legal issue. This is not for me. There's no crime here, so
Hmm.
the police can't really do anything. So it has to either end up in court, to fight each other to get them out, or something like that, or someone just leaves because they can't deal with it anymore. So
Hmm.
and I would think that that could be dangerous though too, just because who knows who the squatter is in the first place, of course, and someone that needs to be not be afraid and have protection with them and stuff like that, of course, too, because they could get attacked. Like these things are risks associated with this, but there's probably people that just don't care. They're like, sweet, no problem, let's go handle this and get it done, and they're just
Hmm.
don't
Hmm.
care, and I think, looking at these methods, I mean, you're kind of left with a choice as a landlord, right? You're like, do you go with
Hmm.
one of these unconventional methods and take a risk here of the method not working and you getting sued or something like that? And if you are going to do that method, how do you make sure that you don't get sued, and make sure that you're abiding by the law as much as possible across the board and doing everything you can there to protect yourself? And then the other aspect is you go and go the legal route, and it could take, in California it could take 6 months. Granted,
Six
it's a
months
matter of
on a
if they
good
have
day
a
in
lease or
California.
not. Say it again.
Oh, it's 6 months on a good day in California.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. If you don't do everything by the book in California, it's going to take way longer, of course. So, and a lot of mom and pops don't do things by the book and don't do it exactly right the way you should. And that's another point: is, hey, maybe you should be investing in markets that don't have a lot of these tenant landlord issues, or they're minimized to a degree where they're more favored in favor of the landlord if you're a real estate investor and you're focused on that in that space. But this is becoming more and more prevalent in a lot of these areas. I don't really know of a market that doesn't have this issue where if there's a squatter, you have to go through the legal process to get them out of that project. Even in states where the tenant landlord laws are in favor of the landlords, this issue doesn't seem to be the case. Have you seen that, or have you seen other markets that are usually easier to get people out? Because you've always heard the stories about, no, I got someone out next day, police came in, kicked them out, but it was like Manhattan Beach, California, or something super high end, where they're not messing around, they could care less.
Yeah, they walk
So
in and so to a $5 million home and they look like a guy who was just scraped off a wall. Like, yeah, the cop is going to use his discretion to be like, okay. And plus, like, there's a lot of these people that are like just known bad actors. It's like, okay, yeah, it's Frankie the Stealer who was high on meth yesterday. We peeled him out of someone's car and now he's in a house, so off he goes.
right.
But what happens a lot of time is they actually do have actual plausibility, and this plausibility for squatters can occur not just in blue states, but in red states, and actually like worldwide. Like I heard from people from like Romania or like Belarus,
Wow.
like all over the place. Basically, like most places in the world have some form of landlord-tenant law,
Right.
whereas if you're renting your property to someone, they gain a bundle of rights as soon as they become a tenant.
Right.
The bundle of rights basically says like, hey, you can't kick the person out unless unless XYZ have occurred, and you got to take them
Right.
to court, you got to pay them money, you got to do a thing, and that's like that in all 50 states, even
And
in
those
landlord
rights
friendly
are
states.
crazy important too, right? So I mean, you have to have those rights. It's property rights. So without that, you don't have a functioning society. It's a matter of people taking advantage or not of those rights, right?
Yeah, no, it's landlord tenant. It's not just tenant rights, it's landlord rights. You have the right as a landlord in all 50 states to eventually like repo your property, but the system by which to do so can be extraordinarily cumbersome. And so in certain red states, if you want to just go the eviction route, so basically if you call up your lawyer and you say like, yo, I've got a squatter, he's going to say, okay, you can either go with ejectment or eviction. Ejectment is it's for somebody who never had the right to be there in the first place. So it really makes the most sense to do ejectment. But the problem with that is that it's a long docket process. It takes longer, and what's the point of this? Remember, it's to get the person out of your freaking house, right?
Right.
So like 90 some percent of the time, people will go with eviction because they're not making income from the property, but they're still paying principal, interest, taxes, insurance, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So they want them out, whether it's eviction or otherwise. But it's a basically tacit admission that the person has some right to be there because you evict tenants, you evict somebody with a contractual right to be there. And so if you evict somebody and then you want to turn around and like get damages from them or whatever, like good luck. These people don't have a pot to piss in. They're not going to get you any money. And so that's all the best you can hope for is your state's or your municipality's eviction process. And some of them are a real bitch.
Yeah, we've been through it multiple times, and that's one of the things I think is really important whenever you're buying a property in the first place. Like we've had to deal with it with foreclosures, we've had to deal with it in the past just when we bought a house and it was supposed to be a vacant, unrenovated house, and you realize that someone just moved in, even if it's unrenovated or needs renovation, they're still living there and they need a roof over their head, so they just move in, right? And they know it's vacant, and when you do that, if they don't have a lease, what if they just never come to the door? You can't even serve them, right, in a lot of cases, and that can delay things. And so people could sit in properties for months and get free housing for months, without being able to do anything as a landlord, because you just cannot, if you can't serve them in the first place or even find out who's there to see if they have a lease, what are you going to do, right? And most attorneys have to have a service to tell them about a court date and prove that service as well in the first place. And so some of these issues are really important. And so making sure and doing a check, right before closing on an asset or something like that, before purchase, because you don't want to have to sit there and not be able to do your renovation for 6 months or something along those lines, which is probably another benefit associated with not buying renovation projects and doing development instead, like you're doing. And I go back to that a lot too, right? Because in the fix and flip business, you have so many unknowns, right? You got to open up walls, find out other things you thought that you didn't realize were wrong with the property, and your rehab budget can be over, and you always have to have a major rehab buffer in place, right? When you're doing development, you have your standard costs across the board with, cookie cutter housing where you're doing the framing and everything. You're just assuming 100% is done, right? It has to be done, which, is unless you're taking over another project for somebody, which is always more dangerous because you don't know what work they did right or wrong in that kind of situation. And so being able to cookie cutter these instead of going and trying to do a massive marketing stream to go find deals off market and things like that, you actually find a development of a land piece where you're developing 20 houses or 10 houses or even a couple houses at a time, or even big developments like 100 unit plus deals and stuff like that, can be, which are done in phases, but you have a consistent workload. You know exactly where your next paycheck is going to come from. You've built in the structure here and you have consistency with a lot less surprises, even though you and I both know there's still surprises in every aspect of real estate, that can punch you in the face.
Unfortunately, yes. So. Yeah, there's no free lunch. At least not one that I've discovered yet.
Right. You're going to get a Haitian community moving into your 3/4 renovated development next. That's some surprise out of the blue that, it's like, here you go. Here's something new that you never knew you were able to lose money with, so.
Yeah, a lot of times you just don't have it on your bingo card.
Right. I think I've learned 1,000 ways to lose money on a house after flipping over 1,000 houses now. So you learn every way there is possibly to lose money, but you become really strong when you do a lot of workload like that, or you do development work, or you do bigger multifamily projects. That's how you learn this business. Now, don't get me wrong, all these problems we're talking about, they're really mitigated for a lot of passive investors that invest in larger syndications where they don't have to do this kind of headache or get the financing or put the deal together or find the land or deal with the construction crews of the development side and stuff like that. So
it's so good to be an
really
LP.
Valuable.
I'm
Yeah, you
jealous of LPs constantly.
Oh, yeah, you really realize how much work goes into the operation side and how hard that is, but also how important it is now to pick the right operator because all these problems have different ways they can be solved. And if the operator makes the wrong decision, then, it could cost a lot of money, right? The $100,000 eviction route, on some of these people, if they don't have the right resources, is key. And so finding someone like yourself or someone with experience like that knows what to do next can just save thousands and thousands of dollars. And you mentioned to me about your course. I think it's a couple $100, which is super awesome. Like at the end of the
Yeah,
day, like I'm buying it guaranteed after this
awesome,
because
man.
it'll save me 1,000 times that just for knowing some strategies to use.
I like to
Right?
say
So
it's worth it's a half an hour of your lawyer's time, and
yeah,
and you're gonna have to
yes,
if you have enough units, if you're in the game, eventually you're just going to have a squatter. That's just what's
right.
going to happen. If you have 1 unit, 2 unit, maybe you can get by. You got 20 units, 40 units, 100 units, yo, you got a squatter, and you're gonna ask your property manager or your lawyer what to do, and they're gonna give you the property manager or the lawyer response, and they're
Right.
gonna say, well, I think you should call your lawyer. That's what the property manager says. And then your lawyer's going to be like, well, and remember, we talked about that. So, but
Yeah,
yeah,
he's going to say it depends, like most lawyers say,
yeah.
and then they're going to have their set answers, and then they can't tell you anything else because their liability is on the line for sure.
Hmm.
So all that is super important to understand that right method. Because I mean, just that one in Kentucky that I was talking about, it cost us 6 months of interest, so $6,000 is about $1,000 a month each for an interest that we were paying,
Right.
plus another $5,000 in attorney's time. Just in that piece alone, which sucked really bad.
Hmm.
I think they know what the process is, and I think the attorneys probably dragged this out as well because they want to get paid on this. And another $5,000 of cleanup on top of that. So it's like $15,000 versus the not so perfect route of going another direction, right? And so you're going to want to weigh that though, right? That money versus what risk you think you're taking based on your financial situation, based on how do you protect yourself and the risks you think on the other side of things, because that's what your decision making should be going through.
Totally. Yeah. And if you were only into that Kentucky squatter situation for 15 grand, dude, you got off easy. I'm telling you, like 5K to a lawyer. Oh boy. Like, I mean, that's him like getting out of bed and brushing his teeth and billing you for it. And then
Yeah.
the court fees and, the renovation, like 5K in damages in Portland or down your way in California. I mean, that's like, that's so minimum. Like it's hard to
We
get a
got lucky and had
contractor.
a squatter that wasn't doing, they were just living there, so, and they actually left peacefully once we got the actual court, order thing, and they left. And I was like, it could have been way worse, to do that.
Yeah.
And they could have destroyed drywall. They could have done all kinds of stuff. We had some paint, some carpet things, and cleanup work, and some minor repairs to get handled. Which nowadays with inflation, I remember back in the day, I used to be able to do a full rehab for like 10 grand, and
Yeah.
now this was in like 2006 and 7, and through 12, and now like minimum rehab is like 40, 50 grand at a minimum in the Midwest on a smaller house, let alone, some of the big ones. These things can cost a pretty penny, especially if they're older and you got to do everything.
Oh yeah,
It's a
man.
hundred
Supply
plus.
and demand. Supply and demand. It's hard to get things done cheaply these days because there's just not a lot of people out there that really want to do them. Out on the Oregon coast, any listeners out there who want to be a successful contractor with minimal effort, move to the Oregon coast.
Yeah.
There's just no supply out there, and it just gets more and more expensive. And so, I mean, you're lucky your squatter didn't completely trash the place because, oh my God, the stories I've heard about people like running puppy mills out of there, like without cages, where they're just running amok, like all over the place because there's just no incentive. There's no deposit that they're not going to get back. So
Yeah.
the only incentive that they have is just to have a nice organized apartment, which if you're squatting, chances are that's not super high up on your priority list.
Yeah, you could care less. Yeah,
Plus,
that's
if you've
it's
got somebody that's trying to kick you out, you probably have some animosity toward them. Whether that's, actually makes sense or not is
yeah,
another
legal or
deal.
not. Yeah, they in their mind, they have the right to be there now, so and this is becoming more and more prevalent. So I think it's extremely important for real estate investors to become knowledgeable about this stuff and know what steps to take, because like you said, that only cost me 15 grand. I say only, even though it still bothers me. At the end of the day, though, you, we knew what to do. We're like, call the attorney immediately, get them started immediately, push them forward every single week, so that they're trying to expedite this any way possible, because attorneys will tend to drag. And so you got to consistently be on them, at all times. Send people by for checks to see if they're still there consistently as well, because they could just leave. Make sure they get served, where you might have to send somebody out and to sit there and wait for them to leave the premises, which is another potential way to get them out of the property, is to actually do that and wait for them to leave. And then they're out. Okay, I'm going to go resecure the property and get their crap out of the property now, because they're gone. They're not in the property and residing there anymore, So
Right.
now, don't get me wrong. You got to be careful. Go talk to your attorney in your state for this, so I don't get sued for telling somebody the wrong thing here. But, these are the things that would save you $15,000 or $100,000 and down the line.
It was actually ranging from about 50 to 100 on average. And so these are the squatter stories that were bad enough to where people decided to reach out to me like, hey, squatter guy, because that actually happened to me. You shouldn't joke about that or whatever. And so people would lose, $50,000, $100,000. It's not nearly as much as people would lose in these deed fraud cases where the entirety of their equity would get stolen. That's the whole forging a deed. And there's impersonation. There's a bunch of ways to do it, but the worst way is getting a fake ID off the darknet for someone whose identity you stole, getting the deed in your house, and then selling it to a wholesaler. That right there, because your title insurance policy, look it up. It's probably the Alta owner's policy. And that policy, unfortunately, does not cover after the policy date. The policy date's when you buy the place. So you're completely SOL. They're like, ooh, yeah, you can do a quiet title lawsuit to get that title back. But here's the thing. Yeah, your equity, it's gone. It's completely gonzo. That guy, it was months ago, by the way, because it looks like you haven't been checking your title online. And I'm like,
well, who checks their title all the time to make sure it's in? Yeah, you're not going to go run title consistently on your property. You don't think to ever even run it since you buy it. You just own it, So that's crazy. So they're actually coming in, getting fake IDs, going through and getting under contract. If you're a vacant, if it's vacant or something like that, then that's what they're trying to focus on.
To heck with the contract. They just forged the deed. They just forged the deed. It's a piece of paper with a rubber stamp. It's not $100 bill. You don't need special equipment. You're forging a stamp and a piece of paper with a grantor, grantee, address.
They own your property, and they probably do this with vacant properties, because being able to do it with an occupied rental where someone's supposed to move into it afterwards or something, or go to a wholesaler to somebody else, may be difficult. But I would assume it's still risky even in that kind of situation for people's homes, that they're living in, even because they may not have any idea. And then you got a wholesaler coming in and buying it. Most of the time, unless they're paying cash for it or something like that, then they're going to get financing, and that's where it will probably stop right then, because they're going to have other loans and stuff like that in place on this deal and everything potentially.
So the original theft, it usually is targeted to places that have no debt, but if there is debt, the debt is still attached to it. But then when the wholesaler buys it, they're going to say, they give it to the title and they open escrow, and the title officer says okay, well, we've got an old mortgage with Guild or with Countrywide or whatever. Countrywide, that reference dates me, but
there you go.
So all right, we got to pay off these guys to the tune of $75K. So it looks like it's oh yeah, no, I assumed that mortgage subject to, so yeah, it's pay it off. So we were going to pay you, George the title thief, 200 grand in equity, but yeah, we got to pay off Countrywide, so that's another 75K. So you're getting 125K. Oh, boo hoo! That's going to be just fine.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did not even think about, that risk out there for this particular thing. So are there ways to mitigate this risk as an investor like this? I mean, you got to go check title every month, on your property,
you could do that. You could do that, or you could pay me to do it for you. I started a software company called Title Fraud Defender, and
Okay.
it checks it every single day. And if anything's awry, then we let you know. And if it actually was stolen, we tell you what to do and how to fix it. So there's other products out there in the marketplace, but they'll charge you like 15 or $20 a month. Ours is
Okay.
like mainly targeted towards investors, and if you get multiple properties in there, like the most you pay is $5 a month, and if you get multiple properties, it's like goes down to like $2 a month or something. It's stupid cheap.
Okay.
But
That's
we got really
awesome.
slick software, and it basically just sign up and you don't hear from us again after that unless something's wrong and says, "Yo, Matthew, hey, did you sell this
So
place?"
it's like a credit monitoring type thing as well, basically similar to that, where you're going to get notified if your credit gets decreased or increased, or you pay off a balance or whatever it is. Something happens, you're going to get notified basically of that occurring. So
Exactly. And so it says like, "Hey Matthew, it looks like that title changed about that property in Kentucky." And you're like, "Oh, you know what? Yeah, I did sell that. So everything's good. No worries. Oh, and you know what? I picked up a place in like a place nearby. So I'll just put that in there and monitor that place, get rid of that one. No extra charge, no nothing." So yeah, if you're an investor or just like anybody who owns property who doesn't want to lose your equity, it's basically just a really cheap insurance policy. So you don't find out about your equity being stolen months and months later.
So you just taught everybody about two new ways of losing money in real estate, of course, with these two strategies that are, kind of off the wall things that you don't normally think about when you
Mm-hmm.
are investing in real estate. And huge value, honestly, for a lot of people, I think, to be able to mitigate their risk and these different potential things that they never even thought to mitigate in the past that they probably should, because they're big ticket items that can cost you a ton of money and
Mm-hmm.
really just take you out completely, even versus just the normal tenant issues and normal repair issues. Those things you can mitigate, you can put things in place to help with that. But when it comes to these big items, you can really take you to school. So putting the right techniques in place is key. How do people reach out to you to find out more about this stuff and get more understanding about the title software, as well as the class that you teach on squatters?
Right. So you can reach out to squatterdefender.com, and that's where the course is available. It's $199, but with the special program or promo code, that is OCG, you can get 20% off of Squatter Defender, and then also Title Fraud Defender. That's at titlefrauddefender.com. That same code, OCG, will get you 20% off. And one of those, the Squatter Defender, is an online course. You can complete it probably like in an afternoon, but by the end of it, you'll know more about squatting than your lawyer does. And then the title fraud software, that is you can buy by the year or by the month. And if you put multiple properties on it, you save a ton of money if you sign up for a long-term contract. And that'll keep your equity from getting stolen, because you'll know if your title changes. And you can also find me on social media. I'm at MRD Portland on Instagram, and I'll get Matthew to put all my social links in the chat. But I'm easily found. If you just Google George McCleary, Instagram, TikTok, like LinkedIn, reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you. And if you've got a crazy story about title fraud or deed fraud, I'm your guy. I like to hear about those. I love to find out about them, share them, and help people out with your experience.
All the comments are going to say things like, stop helping people, get us out of these properties," and things like that. So well, thank you so much, man. This has been great. I really appreciate it. If anybody wants, we have different things on our website that are value add to investors and things like that. We have a 200-point due diligence checklist to be able to do your homework on any particular deal. We have a quick analysis sheet on how to analyze any deal to know what the cash flow is and what the profits are on a flip. We also have free master classes on how to analyze deals, find deals, and raise capital for deals, which are kind of the three lifebloods for real estate investing. So you guys can get that at MathewOwens.com, with one T in Matthew because my parents couldn't spell. So I say it's only one T. So, well, thank you guys very much. I appreciate it. Thanks so much, George. This has been awesome. I really gained a lot of knowledge myself out of this, and really appreciate your time today, man.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks so much, Matthew. I really appreciate it.
Do you want to learn how to create financial freedom in your life through real estate and take your investing business to the next level? If so, you can follow us in one of the following ways. First, you can take one of our free webinars on how to analyze property, how to raise capital for real estate, and how to market and find deals. Three of the key pillars to becoming a successful real estate investor. Number two, you can join us on our mailing list where you'll get tips and tricks on real estate investing directly to your inbox. And number three, you can take our 6-month real estate course that teaches you every aspect of real estate investing you can think of, and more importantly, create financial freedom in your life through real estate investing strategies that I teach. If you want a master's in real estate in 6 months, this course is for you. We're going to go over how to raise money, promissory notes, syndications, fixing and flipping, buy and hold investing, tax and legal structures, self-directed retirement accounts, financial education, how to run a business, how to market and find your deals, and most importantly, how to create that financial freedom in your life so that you can stop trading your time for money and create passive real estate cash flow that you can live off of. If you're interested, go ahead and click on one of the links below, and I look forward to seeing you guys on the other side.